Welcome to the AI Security Update, hosted by Dr. Anmol Agarwal, where we break down the latest in AI and security with experts on the front lines, focused on what you need to know without the hype. Welcome to the AI Security Update, where we discuss the latest in AI and security. Today, I'm excited to introduce our guest for this episode, Yolanda Reid. So, Dr. Yolanda Reid has actually been my mentor for several years, and she brings over 20 years of experience in the U.S. government. But Yolanda, why don't you introduce yourself and your background for our audience?
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. And I was telling my daughter how excited I am because you were my mentee. And I was telling her, I was like, yeah, it's kind of like watching your kid grow. And you always want them to be bigger and better than you. And so I've been watching your growth and all your achievements, and I'm proud of you. And I was bragging, it's like she gets international accolades everywhere, and I'm so proud. So keep being who you are. I am Dr. Yolanda Reid. I started off in cybersecurity as an accident. I went to school to do microelectronics. I wanted to build secure microelectronics, and then the job went away right before I started it. So I had to go do something else, and that something else was cyber. We didn't have the term then, but it was pretty much that I got to address vulnerabilities and exploit them and on behalf of the U.S. government. And so that was a really great job because I think when you learn vulnerabilities from that perspective, it helps you to protect everything else later because the mindset doesn't change. And so I left the US government it's going almost 10 years ago. And I went in the industry and I got to work at some great places. So I got to work doing research and development of cyber and quantum and AI before it was popular. And then I got to work with with AI after it became popular and starting to work on emerging technologies of quantum. And I enjoy being on the cutting edge of technology. I like translating it for people. I like to take something that seems hard and then make it digestible. And so I really enjoy that. And so I'm glad to be on this podcast. And that's what I end up going to school and getting my doctorate degree in was emerging technology. There's a pattern to emerging technology. People don't just accept a new technology right away. And so what are the things we should pay attention to and what are the patterns?
Yeah, thank you so much, Yolanda. So, this is exactly why I think you're a great guest for this show because that's what we're trying to do is basically bring AI security and emerging technology to the general public. So, one of my first questions for you is based on your experience, what are some challenges you've seen in this space in AI security or emerging technology?
I think the biggest challenge, right, is that technology is pushed ahead sometimes before we understand it. And when you push technology before you understand it, there's a danger to that. You don't put all the safety and security and protocols around it that you could if you took the time to do it. And then when you also push technology ahead before you take care of those things, people see like the benefits of the technology and then they kind of just ignore for convenience that this might actually be a really good attack vector. This would be a great platform for someone who doesn't have really good intentions to use against you. And so that's the biggest thing that I find challenging with emerging tech. I love emerging tech. I want people to use it, but I also want to give people something that's trustworthy, that they don't have to think about what they're using, they can just enjoy it. And that's not always the case.
Yeah, a great point. I think we see people, they're marketing these emerging tech solutions, and then everyone wants to adopt the latest, greatest new thing. And then they don't really think about what happens to their data or what happens when they download that application. There are so many viral trends, right, with AI. Like, let's use this new AI tool to create this image of ourselves or to just try it. So, Yolanda, based on what you've seen in the news and what people might have heard about, what is a current event that comes to mind that illustrates AI or emerging technology and something people should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so I would say that um, in the news was is getting a lot of press, or should be getting more press than probably it is how good AI is right now. And so about 10 years ago, Photoshop came out, and then we were able to see like, oh, it was Photoshop because your leg don't look straight anymore, or this part's kind of, your nose is crooked. And so we know you use Photoshop. It's too good now. You have no clue what is real and what is not real at this moment. A computer and algorithms, they are doing a decent job of trying to figure out this is fake or this is real, but it's getting harder for them as well. And so that is a really big challenge of, growing up and living in society, is that you're being exposed to a whole lot of falseness, right? And so you can say images, you can say news, you can say emails, you can say text messages. You're being bombarded with a lot of fake information that looks really real. And so, how do you operate in something like that? And I know that I was doing a talk a little while ago, um, for the state of Maryland. And when I was talking, one of the things that we talked about is like when it comes to voice, right? Voices being mimicked in the news, where someone's trying to portray your child or your or a family member and asking for ransom, and it's really hard to not know, and people can capture your voice and actually mimic it and change the words, and then it sounds just like you because it kinda is you. And so in that realm, how do you protect against that? And sometimes going back to the old methods is the right thing to do. And so, like, coming up with a safe word, right? Like, pick a word that, hey, if you hear this and you are really being held ransom, what is a safe word? Because that would be something that only you and who you disclose would know. You know, the best way to keep a secret is to put it in someone's ear. And so that's a oldie but a goodie. But these are some like really basic things for the things that's happening in the news. Also, links and emails are getting more real with AI, and so you think that you're about to click a safe link is really important. That if that's your bill and you know that's your bill, you can just go to the company yourself, and then you can just log in. I I I rarely click because you don't know what you're clicking to. You used to be able to look at the bottom and be like, "Oh, this is real." No, you can't tell as easily now. And then QR codes. Um, I try to use them as little as possible. Sometimes you're kind of forced to. But when you do a QR code, you have no clue where it's sending you. You don't know if it's sending you to something real or something not. And there's no way to check and be like, this is a real QR code because it's just boxes that a human can't decipher.
Yeah, the QR code is an interesting point because I think it's trending now. Whenever you go to a restaurant now, they say you don't have a menu, you have a QR code. Scan our QR code. If you want to buy food or pay a bill, you just use a QR code. But maybe people don't realize that people are often putting fake QR codes there, and then it takes you to an incorrect link or to a malicious website. So be cautious with the QR codes. Sometimes I still ask for the, paper menu,
I
and then they
do.
look at me. Yeah.
I went to my daughter does cheerleading. I went to Cracker Barrel, like, while we're up and down 95, and they were like, "Oh, just scan a QR code and you don't have to get in line." And when I got in line, they were like, "Didn't see the QR code?" And I gave them a cybersecurity lesson right there. I'm like, "You don't know where this is sending you to, or it could be sending you somewhere that they're still skimming the information. Like, you could be still channeled a certain way to the real thing, and they still can capture it." So I was like, even though it came out your machine, most likely it's okay, but who made your machine? You know? You know. And if you're not checking, because it's hard to check AI these days because people aren't checking, it could have been real at one point and modified at another. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, great point. Yeah, because we just don't think about it sometimes. We're so used to convenience and we want things to be easy, but then people don't think about these things. And then by the time they realize it, it might be too late. And
Mhm.
Yolanda, could you talk a little bit more about the different QR code attacks?
So this is the thing about any kind of tax, right? I can tell you QR attacks, and they're going to create new ones. I mean, that's the whole point of adversaries is like they come up with new things, and it's really up to us to see if we even discovered what the attacks are. So rerouting is the most common. Also, people are making really thin um, stickers, I guess you can say, super thin stickers. And so they'll take like a real QR code, and then when you're not looking, they'll paste on top of that their QR code, and then that's a way that they're able to get your stuff. So, parking, when you're doing parking, that's a really good one. You have to pay for parking or you get a ticket. So I download the app and then I manually put in the number. I ran into that um, uh, cheerleading again at the in the parking lot, and I'm telling my daughters like, I really want to scan this, but I saw that there was a physical URL, and I end up just typing it in because at least I know that I went out to that hotel's website, and I can verify that that was real. So it's a lot of things out there. So in general, I do ask for like the menus, and all those things. And even at my church, they start doing QR codes, and I start cringing. I'm like, oh no, no! Please put a link at the bottom. Give people the choice. Give them the choice. So it's hard. It's hard because for convenience, it's very convenient, but you could be giving away a lot of things. And the other part about a QR code is even you don't know if they're trying to download something on your phone for them to be able to steal later. And so that's another thing. You have no clue. The malicious person comes up with a lot of different creative ways to to defeat your security and so make it harder for them.
Yeah, and people, there's this iPhone versus Android debate, and so people people with
Yes.
iPhone think that they're very secure and like, Android is one thing and iPhone is another thing. But in reality, anyone can be attacked, whether you have an iPhone, whether you have an Android, whether you have, another type of phone. So, um, just because you're using a certain operating system or a certain provider doesn't mean you're immune to being attacked.
That's so true. I end up losing a job offer because of that. I will say that I went to a job and they were trying to figure out, do I know cyber or not? And I'm like, no, I know cyber. And And then they said that they bought all these. This is when Chromebooks came out and Google Chrome was supposed to be the most secure thing. And they were like, yep, our whole cybersecurity practice is based off of this. And I was like, that's not secure. And they're like, no, but it's Google Chrome. And I'm like, no, that's not secure. I've spent a career like, if you say something's secure, people want to like prove to you it's not. And so, time you say it's secure, it's not secure. And later, I was working on a watch floor, and when did you know that same person that I told sent an email for help because they got attacked. And so I was like, look at that. I know what I was talking about. And it took all of me not to go call them and be like, told you so. But it's true. There's nothing secure. I told you the most secure thing you can do is to whisper a secret in someone's ear. That's it.
Yeah. And even then, you don't know who they might tell. So,
Exactly. That's exactly true. That's what we have reality TV to show you.
yes. So, Yolanda, I wanted to touch on some of your experience with quantum. If you could give an explanation about some of the key terms related to quantum computing and why people should be paying attention to it right now or thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah. So quantum is one of these terms that people use. And if I say it, then the person on the other end, they're like, oh, it's too hard. And they like tune you out. And I try to say, well, stay with me. It's something that we don't have to make very difficult. And so, I worked on the research side, and then I worked on this trying to do awareness side and trying to get people to play with quantum. And so, what quantum is a different way of doing computing. So we're very used to, computers came on the scene. The way they process data is by looking at two directions, zeros and one, right? And so and all our decisions are made off of that. It's very binary, right? And quantum computers, they look at problems differently. And so instead of looking at two possibilities, they look at more. So some problems that we have in the world, we cannot solve. It's just too hard or it's impossible. AI is helping a lot with being more creative and supplementing our human intellect, but is really limited when you only are looking at two options at a time, right? And so you keep looking at two options until you hit a dead end, and then, and then you start over a different path. So, with quantum computing, what happens if we look at multiple options at the same time? Even if you looked at four options at the same time or six, is significantly more than what we're doing now. And so that's quantum computing. It's just a different way of solving problems. Um, it doesn't mean quantum computers are going to be the new fastest thing. For a long time, we've been thinking like new technology is always faster. Quantum may and may not be faster. For a problem that's impossible, a quantum machine still might take a long time, but at least it broke impossible. And so it's more about trying to solve hard problems that have given us a lot of challenges. And so I think quantum is something that we should be really embracing, and because think of all the things. I think this is the time we should be thinking of what are the impossible problems, right? Like cancer research or how we do things in space or what are renewable energy sources that we haven't really thought through. I think this is the time that we should be looking at like what are those really hard problems that we can be able to use a quantum computer for and start developing uses. Now, there's a threat side. Anything made for good can be used for bad, right? So we like AI to create pictures and figure out our vacations for us. We like that. right? But people are using AI for all the things we kind of talked about here. And the same thing is going to be true for quantum. And so, one of the use cases of quantum that we have to prepare for, because we actually know that people are putting a lot of resources in it, is security. Quantum machines, people want to use quantum machines to break our current security. And we've had this security posture that we've had for a very long time, for decades. And, from a security standpoint, you should really think like, yeah, we should not depend on the same security for decades because then it's really not secure over time. And the way that we defeated security in the past is we made longer and longer security keys. That's why our passwords got longer and all these things got longer. With a quantum machine, the way that it's put together, the things that was protecting us, making things longer and longer, won't work with a quantum machine. A quantum machine would be like, "Ah, that's not a problem for me. I can deal with that." And it's really a factorization, if you remember the term in elementary school and grade school. And so factorization, prime numbers, those were the things that's hard. And that's easy to a quantum machine that can look at things not with zeros and ones. And so if a quantum machine comes and that's its use case, and people are building this use case to break encryption, then we need to protect the encryption because we have encryption in everything, our computers, our phones, our emails, our bank accounts. I mean, every time you put in a password to something that we're protecting, think of also, how our assets are stored by the bank. So your houses and your mortgages and all of those things. There's a way to prove that it's you, right? And that you're the one that bought it and it belongs to you. If you're able to break that encryption, then who's gonna verify it's you? And who's gonna say that you own it and not your neighbor or someone across the world? And so these all of these things become a threat and a challenge, but there's a solution. And as quantum is being developed over time, and there's many different types of quantum machines, so we don't know which quantum machine is going to win, what country is going to create the first quantum machine that breaks encryption. Yeah, we don't know those things, but what we do know is that people are trying to break their encryption, and so in the United States, we have NIST, and NIST put together a program to develop algorithms that will be resistant to quantum computers. And so you kind of put that band-aid um, over our current systems, and then we should be protected. And so that's quantum as the opportunity. I think is amazing. It's going to give us so much power, but then it's also scary because anything that's can be so powerful and great, someone can use for an evil purpose. And we want to protect ourselves against that. And there's one more threat. So just to add on to that is that, people are like, when we're going to have this quantum machine, and when is it going to break encryption? And it's there's so many guesses out there. The U.S. government has a guess. Europe has a guess. Investors have a different guess because they want to see their money. And so there's all of these different viewpoints of when this is going to happen. And so I can tell you the timeline is between 18 months and 10 years, right? That they think that the encryption can be broken. Regardless of that, we still have a current threat right now, and that is while our stuff is still secure, people are still stealing it, and they're stealing it and they're storing it. And so, what does that mean? Why would they do that? And why would they steal your stuff? And they would steal it for when they do get a quantum machine, they can break it. And so, while we have these algorithms out there, we should be using them, the ones to protect what we have. Some industries are are better than others that are putting it out. So, like our baking industry is doing a fantastic job of securing our banking information. So, kudos to them. And then there's other industries that's like, what? What is happening? And do I have to do this? And it takes a long time to change algorithms or to patch. I mean, in the past, when we just changed our algorithms in our web browsers on our computers, it really took like 10 to 12 years to go from we should do this to actually
Wow.
decommissioning the old algorithms. And so if it's 18 months that we actually break encryption, we're in trouble if we haven't started. If it's 10 years, we're still kinda in trouble if we haven't started, and so it takes a long time, and so it took a long time for us to update our operating systems off of Windows, 98, and then Windows NT was here forever. It took over, 10 years for these things, and so history has shown us it's hard to transition, it's hard to update, and this one's gonna be even harder just because there's so many different layers of encryption that we have to look at. And if we don't know where it is, then we have to discover it, right? We got to discover what we have and then try to fix it.
Yeah, you made really great points about quantum computing and quantum cryptography. So, a lot of organizations are working towards post quantum cryptographic migration, is what they call it. So, taking our existing algorithms and then making it more quantum resistant. Based on my experience, it's been a challenge. So, in the standards world, it takes over 10 years to actually get something into a product, so it takes 10 years to just standardize it and then another couple years to even get it into a product. And Yolanda, you were also talking about people saving your stuff and then using it later. So you might hear this term a lot called harvest now, decrypt later. And that's exactly what you're describing is they're
Mhm.
saying, let's get all the data right now. And then once we have the quantum computer, let's decrypt everything. Let's see everyone's passwords, get into their accounts, see all their data. And if you think about it, right, we use encryption everywhere. We use it for text messages, banking information, anything is it's all encrypted. So some of the information you might think, "Oh, I don't care about that." Like if someone sees my Amazon shopping history, but what about banking or your house or government systems? That's something we need to secure.
And never think that no one wants your information, right? There's security on there for a reason. And you might not know the reason why you're valuable. So I think we need to change our mindset of, oh, it's just Amazon shopping or it's just this. And if it wasn't valuable, people wouldn't be trying to protect it and wouldn't be trying to go after it. It is valuable, more valuable than you could ever imagine. And then you really want to protect your privacy, right? There's a lot of evil out there, right? And so getting to know who you are as a person to be able to model you and put it in an AI or maybe quantum and to know where your whereabouts are and your careabouts and to really model you is a scary thought. So we do want to protect our personal information as much as possible. And so really to think through that. While you might not think something's very important, is more valuable to someone else than you might realize.
Yeah, great point. Because we don't see how some of these adversaries they leverage this information and then they can use that to do you harm. Actually, in one of my previous episodes, I talked to a penetration tester, and he had said he basically took one colleague's information about her going on maternity leave, then used open source intelligence to get that LinkedIn post, create a baby picture, and pretend that baby picture is really her newborn baby, post it on the team Slack channel, and then get the colleagues to interact with it and to share information with him. As a professional penetration tester, he did that. So even something you're posting online, whether it's like a LinkedIn post or a Facebook post, you don't realize that information could be leveraged in a way that you didn't even intend to.
Yep. And that's exactly right. And so sometimes you know, you in this field, you might learn a new technique that people are using. You're like, oh, it's sometimes it's really simple, but they use it for a really terrible reason. And and it happens because we're we can we try to defend what we can understand, but we also need to just defend information. I don't think all our information should be altogether anymore. Like I think it was for convenience, right? And it made sense at one point, like, oh yeah, we should merge all our data. I do not believe that anymore. As I see more sophisticated attacks from humans and AI, um, they're just getting more and more creative.
So, just a follow up question on that. So, you think we should keep our data separate in separate locations? Could you elaborate a little bit more on that approach?
Yeah. So I do think that we should start thinking through what data is important to us and what is not, right? And so super valuable data, we should put the most protections around it, and then some other data might not be need as much protections. And if you go way back when, right, probably like 2010 or 15, that era, because things were getting connected, there was like the Target and the Home Depot attacks, right? And they went through, you know, just the same machinery that you use your credit cards, right? And so why was credit cards system linked to air conditioning, right? So the air conditioning people just needed to submit an invoice and that's it. That data should not have been connected to where the data from machines are. And so I do think we need to think through what is connected and what data can get there. I know that there's a lot of, trying to create containers and things like that, but there's also a lot of people that are dedicated to defeating them, right? And so we want to start thinking through where, data do we want to protect the most and protect it? And then what data is it less risky to put together? I do think we should. I think a model of cloud and databasing should exist, but you need to think through and architect it. So just learn our lessons from what we have seen. We have had all the data separated. That's not great. Then all of it together, that's not great. And so, how do we learn lessons from both as we continue to grow?
Yeah, and then that just reminds me of another concept called anonymization. So, a lot of times with healthcare records or sensitive information, and they want to learn about trends in the data. Like, for example, we see these patients have this condition, like COVID-19, for example. They do something called anonymization. So, that means that they try to keep the data private. So, that means when you list out the patient records, you don't actually see the patient information. You see anonymized data, so you can't trace a certain condition back to a patient. This is really useful, like, for example, when you are in the doctor's office and they're trying to investigate a new disease or something else like that. That you don't need the patient name, date of birth, etc. You just need certain data points to say, okay, these features might indicate this disease. So in that case, they use anonymization. Simple example is just instead of saying, the patient is John Smith or Jane Doe. It's instead patient one or patient two or patient ID, whatever number. And that's an example of anonymization. That's something people use even with AI. So when AI is learning from all this kinds of data, you send AI data that is clean or sanitized. So you don't need AI to know, like, oh, Jane Doe had this condition. You can just say patient number, whatever, had these features that indicate this condition. Because one thing we see with AI is based on what it's trained on, it can actually give you results that might indicate something about the training data or the private information used to train the model. And just think about a healthcare scenario. That's something that's really dangerous. So,
Mhm.
anonymization is another term.
Yeah, I think that's a is is very important. Like when you do research, that's one of the things we have to do for before being approved for research is show how we're going to protect the data, especially if we get it from humans. So we have to remove all of the stuff, and it's a good practice regardless, right? Like don't collect what you don't need. Right. And then when you don't need it anymore, don't save it. It's a really, really clean like, when things are stolen, they just grab the whole bulk, right? But if you never included it in that bulk because you don't need that data, get rid of it. Don't be responsible for it. Don't set yourself up for lawsuits, and things like that because you kept data that you just didn't need to keep. And then also it is you're still paying, right? Like, don't pay to keep data that you don't need. It's not worth it. Data is definitely cheaper these days, but then the air conditioning bill and the electric bill, and so is it really completely that cheap? No. And so if you don't need the data, try to get rid of the data. Some places have retention policies that's like this type of data. Um, there's no reason for this business to keep this. This is not a business record, so then they can purge it. And so it's a really good practice is just looking at your data and look at it from a risk perspective. If I kept this, what do I risk? And the risk could be your reputation, it could be lawsuits and things like that. So some things, if you don't need it, you should get rid of.
Yolanda, one of my last questions for you is think about any concept we discussed today and explain it using an everyday scenario.
My goodness. Um, So I can tell you a concept and a scenario. We kind of didn't touch on it, but we kind of did. But it happened today and it's fresh on my mind, right? And so, I love AI and I love AI for convenience, but then there there's a responsible and ethical use to it that we should be paying attention to and investing in. And one of those things that really gets me is when creating AI and when using AI, we should really advocate for feedback, right? If it goes wrong, how does it know it's wrong? How can we correct the AI? And correcting AI can be harder than you think sometimes. Like sometimes I'm using it used to be ChatGPT. Now I use Claude. But anyways, whatever you use. But when I was working with ChatGPT, I would correct it. I'm like, that's not true. That's the wrong date. This is da da da. And it's like, oh, you're right, Yolanda. I'm so sorry. And it corrects it for me. But and then I had someone else do the same question and it didn't correct for them. And so then I end up making ChatGPT do a report and report itself to the team for they can be able to make corrections. And so that's how we can contribute to our future is that in our world, wherever we are, however we use the technology, we should give it feedback, right? And so I wanted a car that had AI features. And when did you know I gave them a whole lot of feedback on the road about it. And so they call me every few months and it's like, Yolanda, can you tell us now? And it's important that we in our world, as we use it, we know what's good and we know what's bad and we know what's dangerous and scenarios that might have put us in, right? Like if you think for driving, if the AI thought it saw a car and it goes the opposite way, I could be going into another car, right? That kind of thing. That's dangerous. It put me in a dangerous situation. So feedback, we all have um, you know, we use technology in different ways, but we should give feedback on if it's useful, helpful, or not. And I know that I was using Uber Eats today, and my delivery said it was delivered and it didn't get delivered. And I went into the thing and it refunded me my money and said, oh, I'm sorry, but it didn't refund my tip. It just refunded my food, and I was like, "Wait, it didn't do the tip." It was like, "Why didn't it do the tip?" And then I realized I did a custom tip, and it assumed that I did a percentage, and so a percentage times 0 is 0, but I did a custom, and so I'm like, "This is an error." And I went to, give feedback, and there was no feedback loop to be able to give it to the product. And I was like, "That's bad." And then I was like, well, I'm going to call them. They said, yeah, I'm super in technology. I'm going to call them. And I called the number and they said, we don't take user feedback by phone anymore. And I was like, what? How am I going to give them? This is definitely an error in the system, a glitch in the matrix. And so I do encourage, as you use these systems, do give the feedback. Even if it's a little difficult to figure out how to give them feedback, it's still important for us and for our community and then for humanity altogether.
Thanks, Yolanda. I love that example. Because we all use Uber Eats, and whenever I try to use like DoorDash, Uber Eats, they always say like, "Oh, we don't accept customer feedback." Even when I use Uber in the past, I could easily type in like, "Hey, something's wrong with the driver. Like he never showed up." And now it's not even easy to provide feedback on, "Hey, my driver never showed up." It just says, "Okay, like try again. Go with another driver." Uh,
I don't like that.
yeah,
I'm going to Instacart now. They still take feedback.
yeah. Yeah, maybe instead of Uber, go to Lyft or any other ride sharing.
Yeah, it's like you want to it's very important. Systems, they're great when they're great, but when they're not great, we should be able to participate in it.
Yeah. So Yolanda, do you recommend any resources for our audience to learn more?
Oh, wow. That's a toughie. Um, I'm starting to read and there's it's the cyber canon, I think it's called the cyber canon. And so I'll send it to you and then you can post it with the notes. And
Okay.
the exact name. And why I thought it was good was that is a whole team that goes through a lot of books and they're looking to and they rank them and they rank them as this is a classic, this is like really thought provoking. And what I like about the range of the books is that history repeats itself. And so some principles from the 70s and the 80s still apply right now. And it's a good reminder. And so I love how they have the range of way back when to books that are very current, very, very current. So I will send that to you. I think it's the cyber canon, but it's definitely something canon. And I think that's a good one. I think finding a good cybersecurity magazine is always good. And so I like to read good ones and malicious ones because it's good to know both sides. You can't protect against things if you don't know what people are trying to be creative on. And so I also suggested to to read magazines. They're really short and sweet articles and just look at it from different perspectives.
Thanks, Yolanda. Do you have anything else you would like to add before we end this show?
No, it's been a joy talking to you as always. I'm glad that we got to do this. And so this has been fun and I enjoyed it. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Yolanda. So this concludes our episode of the AI Security Update. We'll be back next time with more great conversations. Thank you for listening to the AI Security Update. No hype, just what you need to know. Subscribe to catch the latest episodes and connect with me, Dr. Anmol, on LinkedIn for more insights from the world of AI security. We'll see you next time.